Justice Charameshwar, Arunaji and Brindaji, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and young friends. First of all, I would like to congratulate Common Cause and the Center for Study of Developing Societies for the tremendous research that they have done in bringing out this Status of Policing in India report. Last year they brought out one report, which at that time also I was one of the speakers, and I was pleasantly surprised that the report was not as damaging or as critical of the police as I was apprehending. In fact, I remember, I'm quoting from memory, that in one of the last the concluding passages, it said that people have not lost their faith in the police as an institution, and they are still hopeful that it would improve. So I thought that was complimentary to the police, considering the kind of brickbats we keep on getting every now and then. And now they have come out with this report, which I had occasion to read only today, because only last evening the copy was published. And I must say it's a fantastic piece of work, and the researchers, the professors who have contributed to it have really done phenomenal work in bringing about analysis about the working conditions of police under different categories, and the number of charts and tables and statements. It's really amazing. Almost every page is full of those tabulated statements. It only shows that they really went in great depth to carry out their research, and it's a proper empirical study after talking to about 12,000 odd policemen and about another 11,000 members of their families. It would not have been an easy job. I'm really surprised that within about a space of 1 year they have been able to produce this report. So my compliments to them for this tremendous study. Now I've been asked to speak on police and the rule of law in practice, not rule of law in theory, but rule of law in practice. Now, what do we mean by rule of law? I mean, political philosophers from the very beginning, if you want to start from Aristotle, he distinguished between a rule of law and rule by individuals. That's how he distinguished the two. The constitutional expert Dicey has a very good definition on rule of law. He said it is the absolute supremacy, I repeat, absolute supremacy and predominance of regular law as opposed to the influence of arbitrary power, and excludes the existence of arbitrariness, of prerogative, or even wide discretionary authority on the part of government. That is what the rule of law is. Now, where do we stand in the rule of law? That is the next point. There is a thing like World Justice Project, which brings out what they call the Rule of Law Index. I was going through their latest report, 2019. They have 8 parameters on which they judge different countries. I will give you what the ranking which they have given to India under different parameters. Parameter number 1 is constraint on government power. We figure 40 out of 126 countries at number 40. Absence of corruption. We go further down, 80 out of 126. Fundamental rights. We are at number 75 out of 126 countries. Open government. 34 out of 126. A fairly good number, I would say. Fundamental rights, we are at number 75 out of 126. Order and security, we are at number 111 out of 126. Regulatory enforcement, 76 out of 126. Civil justice, 97 out of 126. 97 is not the number, but 97th position. Criminal justice, we are at number 77 out of 126. So the best ranking is in terms of open government, where we are at number 34, and the worst is order and security, 111, where police comes in. The overall ranking of India in the out of 126 countries, we are at number 68. What is worrying is that between the report of 2018 and 2019, we have gone 2 notches below. But that is, they said, a general trend. Several countries have gone down. Now, why are we at such a low position, 68 out of 126 in the rule of law index? If I were to give you a one-sentence reply, I would say it's not that we have the rule of law, we have the law of rulers. What they say prevails. And looking at the psychology of a common policeman, I can tell you, and I have no hesitation in saying this, that in a critical situation, which has political implications, I must add, in a critical situation, a policeman is always thinking not of what the CRPC says, not of what the IPC says, but what the Chief Minister in sitting in Bhopal or Jaipur or Lucknow, what would he be wanting, what would keep him happy, or what would displease him. And he wants to be on the right side of the establishment, and therefore he makes an assessment of what would be the best course of action, and accordingly he acts. So it becomes the law of rulers and not the rule of law, as I said. Basically, this dilemma before police, or this distortion in the police that we notice, is because we still have a colonial structure of policing. The 1861 Act has been replaced by a different act in at least 17 states following the Supreme Court directions. But why were these acts passed? Try to understand it clearly. The Supreme Court said that these directions will hold good. In 2006, they said, till such time as the center or the state governments pass their own acts on the subject. Now the state governments, without being bothered about what the rest of the judgment said, they just picked up this one sentence. They said the best way to get out of Supreme Court directions is to pass an act. So 17 states have passed acts not to implement the directions of the Supreme Court, but to circumvent the implementation of Supreme Court's directions. And do I need to tell you which was the first state? Any guess? Bihar was the first state to pass an act. In everything else, they would be the last, but they were the first to pass a police act because they wanted to legitimize the status quo, and they said, once we have passed the act, we can say now, to hell with the Supreme Court directions. Those would not be binding on us. Well, going back to the question of police reform, you see, police reforms is being discussed. First time it was discussed, would you believe it, in 1902. 1902, they said that radical police reforms are necessary in this country. And why are radical reforms necessary? The observations made then were by a commission appointed by Lord Curzon. I read from that report. Mind you, these are observations of 1902. And if I were not to tell you that these were observations of 1902, you would have said कि 5-6 साल पहले लिखा गया होगा. To read this and how it applies to today's conditions. The police force is far from efficient. It is defective in training and organization. It is inadequately supervised. It is generally regarded as corrupt and oppressive. And it has utterly failed to secure the confidence and cordial cooperation of the people. Mr. Mudgal, your report was written as far back as 1902 also. Then it goes on to say the police force throughout the country is in a most unsatisfactory condition, that abuses are common everywhere, that this involves great injury to the people and discredit to the government, and that radical reforms are urgently necessary. In 1902, they said this. But of course, nobody bothered about it. There were any number of commissions in the wake of independence I mean, there was the National Police Commission, there was State Police Commission, there was Ribeiro Committee, Padma Bhaiya Committee, Malimat Committee, and whatnot. A whole lot of committees were there. But all these committees, there was one common recommendation in all these committees, that police should be insulated from outside pressures. Barring this recommendation, everything else was implemented. If they want more power, more motorcycles, yeah, give them more motorcycles. If they want increase in uniform allowance, give it to them. So things like that, which were of in cosmetic nature, they were readily conceded. But what would have made a fundamental change to the working of the police, that was never agreed to, that was never complied with. Now, 17 states, as I said, have passed acts, and the acts they violate the letter and the spirit of Supreme Court's directions. And although these states are under the impression that they are out of Supreme Court's ambit and jurisdiction and any review or oversight, but I mean, these acts are being challenged. We have challenged these. We have got these acts challenged in the Supreme Court, and the legality of these acts are yet to be examined by the Supreme Court. Equally worrying is the fact that the other states which have passed executive orders, they have on paper, they have said, all right, you want State Security Commission? Oh, here are State Security Commission. You want a Police Establishment Board? Here, there is a Police Establishment Board. You want a Police Complaints Authority? Yes, we set up a Police Complaints Authority. But the moment you go into the details of the institutions which they have set up, you find that they have curtailed their powers. They have diluted their composition. They have circumscribed their charter. And where the recommendation was supposed to be binding, they have said no, it will be just a recommendation only. So it's a farcical compliance which the states have done. We are struggling against it, but somehow in the Supreme Court also it's turning out to be a long haul, as Mr. Prashant Bhushan would bear me out. We get Chief Justices who are really serious about police reforms. We saw some Chief Justices like that, but they also get derailed by the battery of advocates, because Mr. Prashant Bhushan is supported by just one or two colleagues. Mr. Raju Ramchandran is there sometimes he's also not there, and he's all by himself. And I keep on whispering in his ears whatever I can. And on the other hand, you have about 20 states represented by at least 15-20 lawyers. And these lawyers I have seen them confusing the bench, derailing the bench, sort of pulling red herrings with a view to hijack the proceedings. And it has happened so many times. But lately, I would say, we have had some very good judgments from the present Chief Justice, and we were hoping that we will be able to pursue it. But I don't know. I see some smiles. Maybe others have reservations about him, but I have no reservations. On police reforms, we have had 3 very good judgments by the present Chief Justice. But he is fully engaged with the Ayodhya case, and then soon after that he retires. So I really don't know what will happen. And there are all kinds of observations about the successors or this and that, about which I would not like to share with you here. Now coming to the detailed statistics which have been rattled out by Mr. Vipul Mudgal. I was thinking of commenting on those, but more than adequate comments have already been given, and I would not like to repeat those. But 1 or 2 comments I have to make. At one point, Mr. Mudgal said that if you don't comply with political pressure, the punishment normally given is transfers. Yes, that used to be the practice, I would say, in our times. Over the years, as politicians have become more unscrupulous and more unprincipled, what happens as a consequence is different. Earlier, it used to be just transferred from what they say, a non-vegetarian posting to a vegetarian posting. एक जगह पैसा खाने की गुंजाइश है, दूसरी जगह नहीं खाने की गुंजाइश है, तो नॉन वेजिटेरियन यू गो टू ए वेजिटेरियन पोस्टिंग, ठीक है. और फ्रॉम ए प्रेस्टिजियस पोस्टिंग टू ए नॉन प्रेस्टिजियस पोस्टिंग, from say being SSP Kanpur, then you become SP Vigilance, so less prestigious. So these things have been happening from the very beginning, even when I was in service. But after that came a second stage. The second stage was that you will be punished. They will find ways and means to punish you by initiating some kind of false charges, some disciplinary proceedings, etc., etc. And now I think we are gradually moving towards a third stage, where you may be suspended, you may be got arrested, you may be got involved in some case, you may have to resign, you may be jailed for something you have not done. So politicians are becoming increasingly more and more harsh for non-compliance of political directions. That needs to be understood, and how working has become much more difficult than what it was in our time. अब अगर हमारे पहले भी समय के जाइए तो उस समय की बात और थी. मतलब ठीक है भाई, इनको यहाँ हमारे काम नहीं कर रहे हैं, इनको कहीं अच्छी जगह दे दो भाई, दूसरी जगह, मतलब एक अच्छी जगह से दूसरी जगह अच्छी जगह चले गए. एसपी बुलंदशहर के बजाय एसपी गाजियाबाद बन गए, क्या फ़र्क पड़ता है? क्योंकि बुलंदशहर के एमएलए का काम नहीं किया. पर उसके बाद आए कि भाई नहीं, इनको पटको कहीं, उसके बाद आए कि उनको पनिश करो, और अब तो यह है कहीं मुकदमे में फंसा दो. ऐसे क्रिएट ए सिचुएशन वेयर ही हैज़ टू रिज़ाइन फ्रॉम सर्विस, or he is jailed for something which he has not done or for which he was not responsible. So things are getting really worse. That is one comment I have to make on his report. Another comment I have to make about the working conditions. Of course, he gave a very graphic picture of the working conditions. But there's another area which he has not touched. See, the number of policemen who die in the performance of their duties. You see, every October we have this commemoration parade, and the names of all those who die in the performance of their duties is read out there. Normally the list has 500 to 700, 800 men across the country who have died in the performance of their duties in 1 year. I was calculating, I remember some time back, I forgot to bring the figures, but still from memory I can tell you. The average for India comes to about something 500 plus every year. That is the average. At times it goes to 800 also, 900. But 500 plus is the average. I was trying to get figures of other countries. I could not get figures of other countries. Only US figures were available. That is just in the range of 100. Now, 100 or below 100, that is the figure in US. UK figures, though, they are in double digits. UK figures are not available, frankly, on the net. I couldn't get anywhere, but they are in double digits. US comes in the range of 100. They're also, they have some quite a number of police casualties. But mind you, 100 one side and 500 plus on the other side, it shows the kind of hazardous conditions under which policemen have to work. 14 hours a day is one thing. Not getting a weekly off is one thing. Not having a vehicle at your disposal is one thing. But to be exposed to dangers where your life is at stake is an entirely different proposition, and that is what a policeman has to face. And these are aspects which are generally not taken notice of in. Okay. I would not like to go in much greater detail, but about political pressure, just one example I would like to give about this Unnao case. Now, UP may boast of, they say that we have one of the best dial 100 schemes, which it is. It responds within 10 to 15 minutes, you dial 100 and you will get a response. But what do you do with dial 100 if the will to prosecute, the will to bring a person to justice or to give a woman sense of justice is not there, which happened in the case of Unnao, in the Unnao case. We dragged on for 2 years. During those 2 years, from a constable at the police station level to the right up to the DG and the chief minister, everybody would have known what is happening in Unnao. And yet, the woman suffered and suffered. You have the case being taken over by CBI and all the rest of it. Now, on that incident, Times of India wrote something, I just quote from that. This horror story underlines that the passage of stringent anti-rape laws is no substitute for an upright and independent police. For an upright and independent police as well as efficient courts. Such a police can only be achieved via reforms that give it autonomy. So, I mean, that is the situation. This is the autonomy that we are struggling to achieve through the court and through the support of other well-wishers. Just one last observation. There is a very good sentence in the introductory part of the report. It says that India's future as a democracy and as an economic powerhouse cannot be secured by an obsolete criminal justice system. This is a point which I have been hammering in my articles also, that if you want that democracy, that the future of democracy should be safeguarded, you must have a reform police. Similarly, I mean, you can't have economic development if law and order is not good. But are we in the process even, or are we even making serious efforts, or have we made any progress in our efforts to secure the democratic structure? I don't see that, because the figures that I have before me, and these are ADR figures, that the number of persons with criminal background was 30% in 2009, went up to 34% in 2014, and is at 43% in 2019. 30, 34, 43. It's a graph going upwards. Not that we have arrested its progress. So that makes me worry about the future of democracy even in this country. We are trying, we want to be a great power, we want to have a seat in the Security Council. But are we degenerating into a criminal state? This is a question which haunts me. Thank you.